These are the basics for the functions and needs of men's sexual health. There are a lot of aspects that go into this topic, from the mental health to the cardiovascular health. And it's not always a fun topic for us to talk about when there are issues. In fact, YouTube is probably going to zing me just for making this video, but the whole point of this platform is that we learn and we share that information with others. So here we go with some carefully selected terminology that we can understand, that may not raise any red flags, and hopefully this is laid out simple enough that even I can understand it and you can too. In order to achieve what we'll call lumbar, there are several things that are required. The first one is stimulus. So let's just start with what we'll call stimulus. And this can be seeing, it can be hearing, smell, touch, taste, memories. Really, hell, when we were young, all it took was a stiff breeze, right? But there's a lot of different items that can act as stimulus, just something that makes us think about it. There's also what we'll call morning lumbar, which doesn't seem to need any stimulus at all. Now, once we have the stimulus somehow, that relays to our brain over here. The stimulus is external, and everything from there on happens within our body. The brain sends a signal down to, let's call it bubble gum, and the bubble gum says, hey, I need to make lumbar. But for the globes or the bubble gum, in order to make the lumbar, they need testosterone. So testosterone is required as the transfer, sort of like that. Assuming that there is sufficient testosterone in the bubble gum, the next signal basically says, hey, I need blood flow to the lumbar to create the lumbar effect. So assuming a healthy heart, healthy circulation, clear pathways for the blood, the bubblegum will use testosterone to signal the heart to pump blood and divert enough into the tree to make lumbar. Think of this like a hydraulic system. If you have a crane out here and you're trying to raise the crane, you need several things. You need a good pump for the hydraulic fluid, which is like your heart. You need enough fluid flowing at an adequate amount into the system, which is like your blood flow. And you need a good hydraulic cylinder so that the fluid can go in there to raise the crane. And that's really about as simple as I can put it. Just think of it like a hydraulic system. That's all this is. The only real difference is that testosterone is a component that isn't really here. So maybe you could call that electrical power, right? Maybe you have electrical power is like the testosterone that hits the pump to tell everything to go. So the main three requirements we have here are stimulus, testosterone, and circulation. Those are the three main items. Understanding these three basic requirements helps us troubleshoot if there are issues. So we can look at each one individually. If we say stimulus, well, yeah, you have these things, memories, the breeze, whatever it may be. There's all these different things that can generate the signal for lumbar. However, you're always going to be better off with a lab partner as opposed to just doing the problems in the back of the book. Also, since we're talking about the brain, which can do good things and bad things for us, it's not only the presence of a stimulus, it's also the elimination of roadblocks. Confidence is so important in this whole scenario here. If you're not confident, you have doubt about your ability here and you overthink it, you've probably got a better chance of mentally willing a piece of rope to stick its head out of a wicker basket than you do making this happen. So lack of confidence, doubt, stress, worrying about how many dudes your girl banged on the girls trip weekend last weekend, any of these things can be mental roadblocks that no matter what you have going on in the rest of the places, this can be a serious problem. Easier said than done, but don't overthink it. Testosterone is easier to troubleshoot these days than it used to be. You simply go get a blood lab and you check what your testosterone level is. There are home tests that I've done videos on showing a very simple blood finger prick test that you mail in and get some results. You can go to your local labs, talk to your PCP about it, but you can find out what your testosterone is, and if it's low, you have different options. Regardless of how you get it tested, you get a number that is trustworthy on your testosterone, and either it's sufficient or it's insufficient. It's that simple. Now, it used to be that men had reasonable testosterone most of the time until they maybe reached at least 40 or 50 or whatever it is, and it would start to decline a little bit. These days, unfortunately, there are guys in their 20s that have lower testosterone than I naturally did at 50 years old. It's just a physiological characteristic. You can blame what you want, plastics, stuff in the food, the fact that males are not out doing outside things like construction work, they're not lifting weights as much, they're not doing anything to generate the need for testosterone. So their bodies are basically saying, well, if you're not going to go talk to girls in real life and you're not going to do anything athletic and you're just going to sit there and play on your phone and your computer, why would I waste resources producing testosterone? It's pretty tragic, actually. But the point is, don't assume just because you're young that your testosterone is okay, especially these days. Now, if you're just a little bit low on testosterone, there are some things you can do to boost it. The earlier video I mentioned where I did some different tests, I actually tried one of the biggest marketed, I should say, testosterone boost products that we've probably all seen on YouTube, and found out that it actually had a reverse effect. It actually lowered my testosterone when I started taking it, and my testosterone went up a little bit after quitting it. There were also things like a keto diet I was doing that had dropped it, also caused some electrolyte imbalances, and when I actually started introducing healthy carbs back into my diet, my testosterone went up 39% in 1 month of making that diet change. Having consistent intimacy, being turned on are good for keeping that testosterone high. Explosive activities, if you're running a lot or doing a ton of cardio, maybe not as much, but if you're doing like strength training, lifting weights, or have some kind of a manual job, any of those kind of things are going to be good for it. Your body needs to see a need for testosterone before it's going to spend the effort producing it. Testosterone changes levels throughout the day. So if this is your day and you start at, like, let's say this is midnight, noon, and midnight, whatever your sleep pattern may be, but let's say you're asleep here and it's this is your bedtime, well, it's going to be at the lowest. You're going to go to sleep, and if you have a good night of sleep, your body is going to slowly build up. You're going to wake up and you're going to be at the highest testosterone at that point when you wake up. That's why the morning lumber. And then as you go on throughout the day, it's going to steadily fall until you go to sleep again. That's just the reality. Your energy levels might be higher in the morning. I know some people vary their energy, how they feel in the morning versus at night, but it's very important to have this good night of sleep, quality sleep. If you're not sleeping well, you can't expect the body to recharge it properly and you're going to be running low levels. Your doctor could also prescribe something like an anastrozole, which is an estrogen blocker. So when your body produces, let's say your normal levels of testosterone are around here. Say if you took steroids and you had crazy high levels of testosterone, well, whatever the level is, your body is trying to take some of this excess testosterone and convert it to estrogen. We don't like a lot of estrogen because that's what causes some of these side effects that we all heard horror stories about when we were in high school from steroids. So that can be an issue. There are also, if you have hormone, imbalances and stuff, sometimes something like an Astrozola can actually sort of balance it out. If you are producing the testosterone at a little higher level, it may, cancel out that estrogen production. There are two schools of thought on this. Other people actually would say that you want the body, since we're not talking about high levels of Dianabol in the 80s, we're talking about a little bit extra. They say let the body go ahead and produce its estrogen. So that's just something to talk to your doctor about if he suggests it, or you can ask him about it. If your testosterone is low and you've tried diet, exercise, everything else, and you just cannot get the level up because you're, unfortunately, the new generation that doesn't need it, your last resort would be TRT. So TRT is basically testosterone replacement therapy. It's available in different formats. Personally, I use the injectable. I'm taking it more for a reason of augmenting the anemia that I have to try to get more energy and red blood cell production. But TRT, again, I do the injectables. There are different types of it. I have a whole video on starting TRT, but that is something that should be more of a last resort. And the reason for it is once you start taking TRT, you're stuck on it for life, because eventually what happens is you have your normal, let's say this is what you want your testosterone to be, and you're actually down here because you play video games too much, and you start TRT and it starts going up. Well, eventually your body wants to regulate the level, and your body may say, well, I'm not going to produce my natural testosterone anymore because you have all this synthetic stuff in you. And so at some point, your body will shut down its natural production, and you will be dependent on the TRT to have decent testosterone levels. For me personally, being in terminal heart failure, this wasn't really of a concern because I don't really have that long to worry about being dependent on it. But if you're 28 and you're starting TRT, you may have a long life of being stuck on this stuff. Now for blood flow or circulation. When we're young, we kind of take it for granted that we have good circulation. The heart seems to work, everything's an open pathway, everything's nice. But then we age and we start adding stress to our lives through work, financial issues, what's going on at home, whatever it is. We also may stop being as active as we were because we're sitting behind a desk instead of out doing things. We also may have bad habits we've developed, drinking, smoking, drugs, may not be sleeping as well as we should, may not be eating as well as we should. We may not remember what the inside of a gym looks like. And then suddenly we realize that we try to walk around the block and we're out of breath, or we fall asleep on our arm and it's all tingling when we wake up. And then we know that our circulation is starting to suffer. Circulation is going to be critical for lumbar. That's just the reality. So if you're doing these bad habits, not having healthy habits, any of those can be roadblocks, not mental, but now physical ones, to achieving lumbar. Now you can get multiple tests to measure your circulation, let's say from VO2 max to calcium blockage in the arteries, to ejection fraction is one that I get often because of the heart situation. So there's different tests you can do, but you probably kind of have an idea of this already. You may not want to admit it, but you kind of know, like, geez, I'm probably 50 pounds overweight and I eat like crap. I don't go do anything physical. Yeah, you probably have bad circulation. And then those bad health habits can also negatively impact your testosterone levels as well. The fortunate part is that it's very easy to know what's a good health habit and what's a poor health habit. The unfortunate part is most people just frankly are lazy and won't make the effort to change those things. They get stuck in their habits, bad habits, and it takes a lot to get them to make a difference. So hopefully you're one that's disciplined and wants to make these improvements and is willing to do what it takes to make those improvements. Now, in the meantime, while you're trying to get better health habits, or if you're just lazy and don't want to actually make any changes, then there are pharmaceutical options. The Viagra, the Cialis, those kind of things that are what we call PDE5 inhibitors. And they basically open up the pathways better to allow a lower quality circulation to still achieve lumbar. Now, much like with the hydraulic cylinder having to be functional, you also need healthy stem tissue in your tree to achieve lumbar too. So even if you've got a bunch of fluid coming at it, that tissue has to be healthy. Any machine always functions better when it gets used once in a while. So if you have to dust the cobwebs off your stem over here, then you may have some issues that have cropped up over time. Fortunately, there are things you can do like repeated stimulus. There are pumps that you can use that will apply negative pressure, that kind of applying that vacuum increases perfusion and blood flow through the tissue, but you need to have that tissue healthy. And so again, if it hasn't been used for a while, consistently at least, you may want to look at something like a pump or whatever to just get everything flowing well. Now there are plenty of other issues that can contribute to this. You may have, like for example, my anemia that I have drops my overall energy levels, and it kind of has an effect similar to the testosterone. As I sleep through the night, I'm about as good as I'm going to be through the day, but my energy just tanks throughout the day because I don't have enough blood pumping through because of the heart, and because I'm anemic, I have low oxygen in the blood that's flowing too. Now, that isn't directly a contributing factor to causing problems here, but the general energy is just tanking by the end of the day. And if you have similar things in terms of energy, just because of your work schedule or whatever it may be, you may notice that those low energy periods are not as good for you as perhaps right when you wake up. Other people may be low energy when they wake up until they get moving for the day. You may have other outstanding medical conditions, like you may be, say, diabetic. You may have a prostate issue which can affect this. You may, like if you get a TURP procedure or something on your prostate, that can actually affect your function here as well. Other things, like I've had bladder procedures that have caused issues with this. You could have thyroid or other hormonal things going on. And take a look at your pharmaceutical regimen. If you are taking pills for, blood pressure or cholesterol, a bunch of other stuff, unfortunately, you have no idea what those different medications could also be doing that might impact this. For most guys, it's probably going to be one of the 3 items. Generally, it's probably going to be one of these 2. Just making you aware that depending on what else is going on with your body, anything else can affect this stuff too. And for the guys that have some strange health issue that just won't ever allow these things to work together to make it happen, there are even prosthetics now that they can implant with a pump switch by your bubblegum and still provide the ability to achieve lumbar even though the rest of the system isn't working. This can be one of the most frustrating situations for us as men, but hopefully with at least a basic understanding of the different functions and needs of the system, you can work with your doctor to achieve a Paul Bunyan level of jacked lumbar. If you haven't done so, please click the link below to subscribe to the channel, click the little bell for notifications, and let's live for today.